Yo, George, how do I invite all participants? Am I a fucking idiot?
Hello?
Hello, we're gonna start at 2, so just give us 1 minute.
What is this for? I'm sorry.
This is for TTI, so this is our TTI presenter. We'll be with you shortly.
Do we want to wait a little bit more or should we start at 2?
So we've opened the waiting room, but
Okay.
so if you could sit tight real quick, people should be joining momentarily.
What is this for? Because like it kind of just popped up on my phone and I just hit like accept join Zoom call.
Oh, this is for TTI, so it's our TTI presenter will be speaking.
Hey, so we are one of the sponsors. TTI is Texas A&M Transportation Institute. We do a lot of research in big data. So if you are interested, so please stick around. You'll find out more.
I think there's a problem with the TTI portal, and that's why probably people aren't joining just now. So sit tight, and I'll create a new TTI meeting really quick.
Okay, thanks.
Here, I got this.
Hello. We'll be on in a sec.
Hey, we're having some issues with the meeting link, and I think that's why we don't have a lot of participants in here. So just give us a second to like clear that up.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Our apologies for that. Our apologies for that delay. But I would like to present TTI. Our representative will speak to you about careers, opportunities, and data science here at TTI.
Thank you. All right, let me share my screen. I'm not able to share my screen. It says the host has disabled the screen sharing.
One second. All right. Can you try that one more time?
What?
Yep, that works. Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Gargi Singh. I am an assistant research scientist at TTI, that's Texas A&M Transportation Institute. So I went to A&M for grad school, and I have been working here since then. So that was 3 years ago. So in this workshop, I'll be talking about TTI. I'll give you a brief overview of what we do, who we are, and then I'm going to talk about data science from the lens of transportation so that you understand how your skills can fit in, even if you're not a transportation engineer or planner. All right, let's dive in. So let's talk a little bit about the history, just so that you have some idea about TTI. So we've been in field for 70 years now. Started with early focus on roadside safety, pavements, and bridges, but we have come a long way since then. And I'll talk about that in the subsequent slide. Our motto is saving lives, time, and resources, and you will see it through our work that I present later on. And this is our research portfolio right now. So you see how it has expanded since then. And I mean, we look at it from multiple lenses, and I would like to explain a few of them because some of them might pique your interest. And remember, these are just the focus area because these themselves are further divided into multiple programs who do different researches, and they have like sub-focus areas. So for instance, like let's look at safety. So one of the programs is crash analytics program. So they use the statistical analysis and crash modeling to evaluate the current and potential countermeasures. One of the programs at safety, they look at the behavioral issues. They look at basically they study the behavioral, the driving pattern of different drivers. And then we have mobility. So where there we look at the peak hour traffic delays, congestions. And then we have environment sector where we look at air quality, we look at energy impacts, we look at sediment and erosion control. Because in transportation, there's also a pavement research group as well who look at just the infrastructure, like the road surface, things like that. And then we have freight. So freight, we study the transportation of goods, not the people. So that's not just limited to 18-wheelers and rail, because there are also like smaller vehicles, for instance, pickup trucks or vans, like those Amazon delivery trucks. So we look at that as well. So transportation is changing, it's evolving. And we try to keep up with that, and our research question also change according to that. Like for instance, like right now with COVID-19, it's going to change a lot because people have started working from home. So the research questions are, how is transportation? Maybe they are not going to make a lot of work to home trips, but they might still travel more. They might make more different types of trips. So these are just some of the research questions and focus areas. And we also look at different modes, like not just cars or trucks, but we also look at pedestrians, cyclists. All right, let's move on. So the Institute works on over 700 research projects. So with over 200 sponsors in the US and abroad, government and private sectors are sponsors. And we have more than 400 professionals and more than 200 students. So if you notice, there's a really large student to full-time ratio here. We do hire a lot of students. I'm one of the examples. I started here as a student, continued working full-time because I really like working here. So it's a great learning experience because it honestly adds to your knowledge. You learn beyond the school curriculum and you get to work on real life projects. So even though we are part of the university system, we are not really limited to College Station. We have offices in most of the major cities in Texas and in DC, outside of Texas. So I, for instance, started at Bryan College Station, but I moved to Austin last year. So there is that flexibility, and there are co-workers that I have who are working remotely. So it's getting more and more flexible. We also have 2 offices outside the US, one in Doha and one in Mexico City. The office in Mexico City mostly focuses on the border traffic, the US and Mexico border traffic. So even though our offices are mostly limited to North America, but our projects are not, TTI has conducted research in 48 countries, and we hope to increase that number over the years. All right, so before we dive into the data side of transportation, so that was my gist about TTI. So let's take a moment to talk about the connected transportation. So that's the automated and connected transportation nodes. What they do, what it means is basically outfitting vehicles with Wi-Fi or other sensors to enable internet connectivity during travel and collect various data, not just location. I'll talk more about it in detail later, but that is our future. And I'm letting you know because it's very, very data intensive. We're getting a lot of data from these connected cars, and that's why we need more people with your skills who can help further research in this field. So you might have seen this graphic multiple times, but I thought it's like so applicable to what we do because we go through the same process of obtaining data, cleaning it, dissecting it, and then interpreting it. So to be a unicorn in the world of data science, one needs to master every step of the data science. So from cleaning data to modeling it and visualizing it. So it's necessary to know all these steps, and I'm going to look at transportation from all these lenses. So let's look at the data set, the data that we get in transportation. So I tried to divide them into groups. As you can imagine, with so many disciplines, there are so many data sources as well in transportation. I tried to group them into two categories. So the one is the ones that are collected or acquired by public agencies, like traffic counts, travel surveys, crash incidents, air quality. And like here in this example that you see, TTI also does crash test. So this is an example of occupant protection crash test. So TTI is a leader in this. We have conducted more than 2,000 full-scale crash tests with vehicles weighing from 1,200 pounds to 80,000 pounds. Researchers perform crash testing. They work with public agency, they work with private sectors. And basically what they do is they look at the design, the infrastructure part, the design, the construction, and they look at the safety. So for instance, crash cushions, breakaway signs, barrier system to reduce injuries of the occupants. And this is a lot of data. Like I don't have the number, but I know there is a lot of data that they get out of this crash testing. So having knowledge in handling that data is really important. All right. So let's look at another data. I briefly wanted to touch upon this because shared mobility is such a thing now. It's been growing dramatically over the past few years. Hello. All right. So okay, I thought I was disconnected. So it has grown dramatically over the past few years, and in some cases, literally it showed up overnight. So it's hard to collect this data from outside. So cities have started asking these mobility services to share data with the cities. So the data origin and destination or the trip route, or sometimes even they have information about the vehicle. Like for instance, if it's Uber, like what kind of cars they are driving. And some cities restrict the number of bikes and scooters in the city. So it's really important for them to know so that that data helps them analyze if the companies are complying with the city restrictions. So these data are available for researchers as well. And if you're interested in studying shared micromobility, it's good to know that the data is out there available. And now let's talk about the passive data. So the passive data, for those who don't know, passive means it doesn't collect it actively. So it collects it passively. What that means is it's collecting it in the background. Like for instance, the cookies on your laptop or the location tracking on your mobile phone or the history of your spending on retailers' website and apps, shopping apps. So whether you realize it or not, some of our smartphone apps, they are spying on us, and it sounds scary, but you might already know that because every time you open an app, it's asked if it can access your location. It's using that data. It sounds scary, but let me assure you, the laws are becoming better related to data privacy, and companies are more accountable now. So we get this connected car data, the one that you're seeing on the screen. So this is something we got last year. So we got a 7-day sample just to assess it. And so these were 40 billion trip traces. Well, this is just in Texas, which was, I think, more like 5 or maybe 6 billion. But those were the 40 billion trip traces in the entire US that we got. And I'm letting you know the number is so that you understand how rich the data set are. But we could not do a lot of inference out of it. They don't let you infer attributes like the home location of people or the work location. So just giving you an example of how the privacy comes into play into these kind of data. So there are 3 kinds: the location-based, the GPS, global positioning system, and connected cars. Let's talk more about those because those are something we deal with a lot. So the first one is the location-based data. These come from smartphone apps like weather app or even dating apps. So the locations, we get the locations, but we don't really get the trip traces. And what we get it from data vendors. So those data vendors, they get data from the apps, they clean it, they aggregate it, they clean it, they remove the duplicates, because if your device has multiple apps, it might be detecting you multiple times. So it's necessary to know the unique trips. So they do that at their end, and we end up buying the data from them. So the data products are like speed, travel time, speed, origin, destination, trip lengths. And the other one is the GPS data. So the difference between the data type here is we get trip traces from the GPS data. Those are called waypoints. So we can see which road was taken. So that's important. And so the GPS, the sources of these are either mobile devices or navigation system in your car or embedded GPS in vehicles. And another advantage of this is actually you can differentiate between passenger and truck. That's really important, especially for the kind of stuff I work at, because we want to study those two separately because they have really distinct travel behavior. And then the connected cars data, something that I touched upon before. So this is more on the horizon in terms of widespread adoption, but it is still happening right now. So new cars have all sorts of sensors. These cars generate up to 4 terabytes of data per day. That's huge. So, and even though not a lot of data is actually sent to the cloud, but when 5G is more commonplace, we expect that we'll have more connected vehicle cloud data, and we'll have it real time, and we could do even historical analysis using that. One advantage of car data is they have other information that GPS and LBS data do not. For instance, they tell us like what kind of fuel was used. They tell us like if the seat belt was engaged, or if the windshield was used, or if there was a sudden braking. So that's really important in like different focus areas in transportation. Now I'm going to talk about the skills required as well, just because I'm going through all the process of the data science, and also so that you know like what we are usually looking for. Hey, did I just get disconnected?
Yes, it was disconnected.
Yes, you just disconnected.
Oh, is it just me or?
I think it was just you.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Are we back now? So should I start sharing?
Yes, we're all still here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I couldn't really see that.
Oh, that's fine. You might have to share your screen again.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, could you let me know where we are at?
Yeah, we're all.
Were you able to hear through till here?
Right here is, yeah.
Right here? Okay, good to know. Yeah. All right, thank you so much. Sorry about that, not sure where that happened. All right, I want to talk about the scrubbing, the cleaning data part. And I also call this the preliminary exploration because you don't know what you want to clean unless you actually see the data, right? So the data vendors do clean the data at their end, as I described before. They do like take out the duplicates and stuff like that, but then they are cleaning that should be done at our end based on the kind of analysis we are doing. For instance, in the example on the left, I was working on transit data, and there was like few trips like that here. Like, so these are the bus stops, the orange points are the bus stops, and the blue points are the trip traces. So there were trips like that that did not complete the entire route. Now, this wasn't a problem during my initial analysis because I was looking at the speeds, I was looking at the headway, like basically the distance between this bus and the next bus and the time difference. So it was okay to use this for that. But then in the end, I wanted to look at the cycle time, basically how long it takes from one end to another. And for that analysis, I had to do the cleaning. And I'm letting you know this because, as I said, the cleaning depends on the kind of analysis you want to do as well. And of course, there might be some odd trips that you cannot really use it. Those are some things that the vendors miss to clean at their end. So that's something you need to do. And I really want to emphasize on this part of the data science, the phases that we are going through, the cleaning part is because data scientist students, they learn modeling technique on already clean data, but that's not the case in industry setting. So getting the raw data, getting it ready for modeling is like 80% of the work. According to study, the 80%, that's where it comes from. But according to my experience, I can vouch for that number. It really takes a long time for one to prepare the data. So that's something you need to be ready for. So I'll keep adding skill set required. So for this, you really need to know either R or Python because, for my previous example, doing this for a really small data set is easy. But then I was looking for data for over 1 month for 24/7. So knowing the programming languages will make your work easier. And also it's not really possible to do work without those when you're dealing with such large data set. All right, the third part is the explore part. So we mainly do like 2 kinds of analysis, like that's where I would like to group it. The geospatial analysis and statistical analysis. So it's good to know, it's good to have some geospatial skills in transportation because since you are dealing with space here, right? So like for instance, the example on the left, it's something that I did, basically map matching those points, those GPS points to road network. And then like, obviously there's more to the analysis because you can't just match it to the nearest point because the data is not. But that's where the spatial analysis comes into play. Also doing things like routing techniques. The statistical analysis were more like detecting patterns, forecasting, regression analysis. All right, so let's go to the next part, the modeling data. So the modeling of the data, it actually depends on the application because you might or might not need to model the results. Of course, a lot of us do, but also some of us really don't because that's not what we are looking at. So the model really helps us do multiple scenarios. Like for instance, if there's a new highway, how does that impact the traffic? Or there's a bus route change, or there's a parking restriction, or how does that impact the future travel demand? So that's really important to know for policy purposes. And there are different kind of models. Honestly, I don't think we have time to go such deep into it, but I just wanted to give you some examples. If someone is from transportation here, they might able to recognize the gravity model. So that's the travel demand 4-step modeling. If not, you might have heard gravity model somewhere else because a lot of the models in transportation, they are actually derived from different disciplines. Like for instance, the graph network theory, this is derived from, this is a mathematical theory where we basically look at data in terms of nodes and linkages. So the nodes here could be cities, or they could be like freight distribution centers like Amazon hubs. And the links are basically road. And then we have time series model, gravity model, just if someone is curious, is more like a gravity model, Newton's theory of gravity, where we see the interaction between two locations, where it declines with increase in distance. So if there's more distance, more time, and more cost to travel, there's less gravity, there's less force between those two. So having knowledge of models here is important. Not necessary, as I'll give you some examples later on. And as I said, you can always learn. You need to be willing to learn. So machine learning also has an potential actually. Like for instance, remember the GPS data example that I gave? So we do get trucks and cars separately, but what if cars are being used for freight activities like the Amazon or even the food delivery, right? They deliver it on car. How would you know that? Because that is also contributing to freight, because it's also contributing, it is transporting goods. So putting some machine learning into play could really detect those kind of patterns in the data set. So yes, that's beneficial. And also it's beneficial to know some models like economic models, like because a lot of freight models are actually derived from economic models, since we are looking at the economy, right? We are looking at the goods that contributes to the economy. All right, so this is the final section where I talk about the work we do, where we interpret the result, where we visualize it. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the mobility sector, the transportation planning, and that's because I work there. So I can talk more about it, but I'll go through other examples as well. So my team, we buy LBS and GPS data, and obviously we use cloud services, we need data science skills because those are really big data. The reason we buy both separately is because in GPS, we actually get a lot of trucks because a lot of those navigation GPS devices are in fleet services. And then the LBS is mostly passenger means people, like non-freight, so cars. And we need to understand both of them. So we buy those data separately. So it's really good to know the bias in your data so that you know what you're working with. And then we use it for various purposes, like we do routing in those to make more sense out of it. Mostly we use it for external travel study. I'll explain that to you in the subsequent slides. And a lot of the output from this is actually used in travel demand modeling. So this is an example of what we did with the GPS data. So on the left, you see the external internal trips. What that means is people who started from here ended their trip in San Antonio. And this is the study area that we defined. So we were just like, we try to experiment a lot with different visualization tools as well. So if you're interested to know, this was done using DeckGL. So this is important. Coming back to the external travel, this is important because it goes in the modeling. We model the future, we forecast it for like next 10, 15 years. And then that forecast is passed on to the city planners. And they use it to, plan infrastructure in their cities so that they know what's coming. And on the right is the study we did in Bryan College Station. Again, that's using our LBS data actually. So we see how the Highway 6 lights up because most of the through traffic, so external means it started outside and ended outside. So a lot of through traffic goes through Highway 6. So visualizing data like this is, so there's a tool that one of my colleagues made, again on DeckGL. And it's the reason I'm showing you this is because sometimes a lot of things that goes through your analysis, after your geospatial statistic analysis, some of the things just hide there. You don't see it. And that's it. That's why it's really important to visualize it, because a lot of times you don't really make sense of the numbers unless you see it spatially, and also you notice some things that was hiding in the data. So that's why field data visualization is really important part of data science, because they might see so many trips might be coming from a particular location, and then you might be like, wait, what does that really tell us about this area? So this is another example. So this is the non-modeling application. Wanted to let you know this again, like, because this is also an application of big data. So this was a quick study that was done to look at the truck movements in the oil field in the West Texas. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this area, but there's a lot of oil fracking here. And the issue was because of this, a lot of oil fields, high density of oil fields, a lot of trucks would go and then they would take a left. Even if there was no intersection, they would just take a left in the field. And that's really dangerous. And those trucks are big. So the city actually wanted, I think it was actually Texas Department of Transportation. They really wanted to see where that was happening. And honestly, it's hard. It's a big stretch of road. You can't really go do that manually. Even if you do, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of money, because it takes time to collect these data. So of course, we took the leverage of passive data here. So we used GPS trip traces, and we detected turning movements, and we highlighted the area where it was happening the most. And people actually did go there to do a site check, and 90% of those points were confirmed. So that really made their job easier. So now that they had the location, they could plan for it accordingly and apply the measures. Another thing, that mobility group. So this is not my group, but as I said, part of same division, part of same focus area. We also looked at the truck delays. So there was a study that our group did, the mobility group did, that average commuter wasted nearly 7 full working days in extra traffic delays in 2017. That's a lot. That translate to $1,000 in personal cost. So, time is money, of course, but then also you spend a lot in fuel as well when you are just sitting there in traffic. And also it contributes a lot to air emissions as well. So, and on the right here, you see a good example of congestion and truck only, congestion and all vehicle congestion and truck only congestion. So it's important to know them separately, because as I said before, they work really, really different. They have a different travel pattern. Like for instance, over here, you see that the truck delay is really a problem on I-35 on this stretch, but it is not as much of a problem when you see rest of the traffic. Another thing that we do is, so this was one of my colleagues in our group, we make assessment tools for the cities. So these are basically tools that are designed to help metropolitan planning organizations, and these really help in interpreting analysis, like just looking at stats. So rather than looking through a report, you can just go online, select it, look at the travel delays, emission, planning time index, which is basically the ratio of peak period travel to free flow travel time. And this really helps them because, if they're just looking for something specific, of course, they can look at the whole area as well. But then if they just want to target one road, they can just pick it up and then they know their numbers. So for those of you who are really interested in environment, you might enjoy this. So these are animated GIFs that, these are just GIFs that represent the simulated EV charging demand. So the group, they modeled home and public charging separately, and they created different scenarios like 5%, 10%, 15 and 20. So what that means is 10%. So in this example where we see 10% penetration, means if the 10% of the light duty vehicles were electric, how much charging do we need according to, the city, and also how it varies according to the location. So that really helps in infrastructure planning, and it's really important to know because we are heading in that direction. So that is when the AC is being used, and the right is with no AC because that affects the EV range. Now, next is the air quality. So there's a lot of research on air quality too, and it is important. So TTI here, they collected second by second truck movement and engine parameter data from short haul heavy duty trucks. So this is in the Houston area. So the researchers, they process the data, and then what we see here is truck idling activities. Idling basically means when a vehicle is stationary but turned on. So that causes a lot of emission. So that's something that's really important while studying air quality. And a problem in the US-Mexico border as well, because the traffic flows so slowly in the border, that creates a lot of emission. And then safety, another really important focus area. So here in the example, you see that how the crash data is examined through data visualization. For those of you who are interested, especially in safety, you should definitely stick around for career fair, because my colleagues who are expert in this, Eva and Marcy, they would be present there. So what they do is they look at crash by different types, like they look at modes. So if there's a bike crash or a pedestrian crash or a car crash, they also look at it by severity. Was it a fatal crash, non-fatal? And if non-fatal, like what was, how much was the damage, how much was the injury, and which location, and why that happened, why did the crash happen? So because these are really questions that are important to be answered for planning infrastructure and prevent such incidents. For instance, if there is an intersection which is experiencing more crash, then there must be a design problem, right? Or maybe it's certain age group, maybe they need to have more training. So things like that. All right. So you might be familiar with smarter traffic signals, like you might have an idea that that exists. So this is how automated traffic signal performance is done, where they use high resolution signal controller data. Like on the right, you see how it can detect a pedestrian, it can detect cars. So that's also one of the examples how this kind of data is used. It's used by numerous states, Department of Transportation and cities. All right, I would like to keep some time for question and answers, so wrapping it up. Just we are always looking for students, so remember that. So please stick around for the career fair if you're interested. And that being said, we are also looking for talented data scientists who really help us solve the real world transportation problems. And it's really fun working at TTI. You learn a lot and you learn while working. So I think that's the best deal. So here is my email. If any of you have any questions, if you don't get a chance or if you think of it later, please shoot me an email and please ask away. Thank you.
I have a question about, so you had mentioned that a big part of what TTI does is collecting data, like sensor data from different vehicles. And then you also had mentioned that your team, you buy like GPS data in bulk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then do it. So I guess what sort of portion of what TTI does is kind of data gathering versus data processing of these big aggregate data sets?
Oh, so the connected vehicle, I'm not sure if I understood you right, but just to like make it clear, the connected data vehicle that we get, we buy it, we don't collect it. So the GPS data, the location-based data, and the connected car data, these are collected by other people. Like, like those data is given to, sold to data vendors. They make it usable where they, remove duplicates and stuff. And then TTI buys it. And a lot of times actually TTI doesn't buy it. Like for instance, in my program, we work with TxDOT. So TxDOT is the one who buys it and we help them use it, analyze it, make sense of it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Any other questions? Is any of you here in the field of transportation? I'm just curious. I guess not. And I hope I didn't intimidate you by like, showing you all those skills, because I was going through the Discord post, and I saw a lot of you are actually beginners in this field, and I just wanted to say that that's okay. Honestly, I was as well. I mean, I went to grad school for transportation planning, and they don't really teach us programming there. I mean, they should, but then we were not really taught about that. I had like no skill in terms of data science. I think the only experience in programming I had was in high school in C++. So I guess that helped a bit. But then I just like learned myself, and I feel a lot of the data scientists do that as well, right? Like you do take online courses, Coursera. So yeah, that's acceptable. When we hire someone, a lot of times we are just looking for some skills, but then also see how much you're willing to learn as well. So I just didn't want to deter you by showing all those skills. So I guess that's it. If you have more questions later, if you're curious to know more about other stuff
Yeah.
as well, please
I have a
email me.
question.
Oh, okay.
So I'm in industrial system engineering, and I'm interested like in the transportation field. Just like what kind of skills I have to have or to improve in order to be like maybe fit to transportation field.
Yeah, so we do hire students and even like graduates from other fields as well, because everyone brings something different. And as I said, like a lot of our analysis and focus these days has been in being able to like use big data. It's honestly has changed a lot in last few years. So if you don't have any transportation skills, but if you have data skills, you are welcome, because we will teach you about transportation. We'll teach you how that can be used for transportation. But you have data analytics skills, like you're more than welcome. So please go ahead and send your resumes, and we'll be open to it. And because we are here, and so for instance, like I was looking at some proposal, I wanted to submit a problem statement for that, and the problem statement said that you need to hire a graduate student, right? So there are funding like that which you get when you hire a graduate student. So I'm there, and my colleagues are there to provide transportation specialization, and we are looking for someone who has data analytics skills and who can do the heavy lifting.
Great. So just one more question, like how do we apply for this position?
I would say stick around for the career fairs. So it's at 3 o'clock, 3 to 4. And we can talk more about it, that how you can reach out and how you can submit your resume.
Oh, sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess I just had one more question. I'm curious, so is TTI then like contracted out by, like city governments and things where they want to decide, where to put their traffic lights, or how, I guess, who are the main clients for TTI?
Oh, so the main clients are basically Department of Transportation. So, and especially TxDOT, so Texas Department of Transportation. Like a lot of things that we do, they do reach out to the city planners that I talked about, but we do not really work with them directly as much. Sometimes we do, because some of the MPOs are really big, like Dallas, and they have like really good funding. So they might come and be like, hey, we want to like know more about this. Are you interested? So that's like a different contract that goes with the city governments like that. But mostly it's state or federal level.
I see.
Yeah, and basically they are the one that are connecting us to the other people. So as I said, like we work with them, they fund us, and then it's their responsibility to translate our analysis, our results to like smaller areas and MPOs.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Again, our apologies for some of the technical problems. Excited to see the career fair at 3.
Yeah, okay. No, not a problem. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.